It's not until the 1 hour and 11 minute mark that Dune Part Two reveals Paul Atreides' true rival, someone born and bred to fight and kill without feeling a thing. And this is the precise moment that everything in the story levels up. The stakes, the anticipation, the pacing. And in a sweeping epic filled with outstanding visuals, strong performances, and memorable moments, somehow Austin Butler steals the show as Feyd-Rautha. A character that captivated the imagination of every viewer, yet only actually had 16 minutes of screen time in a 165-minute movie. Butler began his acting career as a teenager, successfully popping up in kids' shows for the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon for years, before then being cast in the Sex and the City prequel The Carrie Diaries in his early 20s. After that, he expanded into film, working with the likes of Tarantino, before landing a career-changing role as Elvis that earned him his first BAFTA and Golden Globe. Whether you liked the film or not, it was simply undeniable that Butler had embodied Elvis perfectly, clearly dedicating himself to the part to ensure he did the icon justice. But was it just a one-off, or were we potentially witnessing the birth of one of the next great character actors? Sure, he could play the hero, but could he really handle exploring the depths of darkness as a villain? All of our questions were answered when Denis Villeneuve cast him as Feyd, as it was now, at the age of 32, that he would yet again deliver one of the greatest performances of the last decade, masterfully embodying a villain that feels like a cross between Darth Maul, the Joker, and Hannibal Lecter. But what is it about this performance that makes it so memorable? Let's take a deeper look at how Austin Butler perfected Feyd-Rautha in Dune Part Two. The first key is his preparation for the character. To carve his body into stone, Butler began training with the same Navy SEAL that trained Brad Pitt for Troy, and automatically that intense regime changed the way his body felt and moved, which feeds into the character's distinctly confident strut, with his arms swinging by his side, visibly ready for war. To avoid shaving his head, the actor endured 3 hours of makeup every day, which involved carefully attaching a bald cap not just over his hair, but his eyebrows. This new aesthetic allowed him to lose himself in the character, as it's a fresh canvas to work with.
It's a real gift as an actor when you look in the mirror and you don't see yourself, and that's what I felt with this.
But unlike Sting, who brought a camp zaniness to the part, Butler wanted to bring something more harrowing to the table, and really delved into the psychology of his character. For example, after admiring Stellan Skarsgård's performance in the first movie so much, he recognized that Feyd's voice would probably sound just like his uncle, as we tend to pick up the accents of those we're raised by through osmosis. He stated, "It dawned on me that Feyd grew up with the Baron being the person who has the most power. We inherently end up taking on traits of those we grew up around. The voice ends up becoming this fingerprint of the soul in a way, and it changes the way you breathe, and the rhythms that you think in are even different. And so that ended up becoming a real key for me." But while it's easy to say this, executing it is a whole other factor. So yet again, after already mastering Elvis Presley's iconic tones, Butler began working with a vocal coach to try to emulate something completely different, now mimicking his co-star's deep, raspy, Swedish, gurgling inflections.
But tonight, you're a hero.
Would you like some fresh meats, my darlings? I already know everything I need to know.
This makes Feyd feel like the thinner, younger, perfected warrior version of the Baron, bred for the exact battle he encounters with Paul Atreides. He's never been destined for anything else, making this final battle feel truly tense, as the protagonist's opponent is everything an antagonist is supposed to be. By choosing to map his voice onto his character's relative, we can see just how much Butler builds his characters from the ground up. He's not just thinking about what they do or say on the page, he's finding ways to connect and to understand them as people.
It was very early on not judging him, and instead seeing from the inside the world as though everything I'm doing is the right thing, which can be a tricky thing to justify behavior that on paper would seem evil.
As Tom Hiddleston brilliantly stated, every villain is a hero in their own mind. So Butler finds a way to believe what his character believes, that he's better than everyone else, that he's more worthy of living than everyone else, that his desires are all that matters. As unless you brainwash yourself with your character's social conditioning, you'll only be reading their lines, but you won't be breathing life into their lungs. The next key is Butler's ability to physically embody violence. In order for a villain to be feared, they need to feel like a real threat to the hero. Where Paul only uses violence to bring him closer to power, Feyd embraces it, enjoys it, and even craves it for its own sake. To him it's a sport, and therefore he's willing to dispose of anyone around him for the most minor infraction. Most of this is down to Villeneuve's direction, but to ensure the character oozes bloodthirsty instincts, Butler has him physically display his lust for it with every detail. For instance, when he's first presented a weapon, almost like foreplay, he inspects it, strokes it, familiarizes himself with what it must feel like. Austin then makes the character more viscerally repugnant by having him lick the blade, almost like he's seducing himself to the charms of violence. It's a strikingly oral performance because Butler wants to show that his character has more than just a taste for it. Violence clearly captivates a part of his mind so much that it brings out this animalistic side to him, to the point we can see drool dribbling out of his mouth as he cackles during battle. Or when he casually slits a subordinate's throat, Butler continues the scene like nothing happened, and actually returns to eating his snack, resembling a predator licking its lips. This demonstrates the psychopathic nature of his character, as taking a life doesn't even momentarily suppress his appetite. Austin makes his character's relationship with violence feel different to everyone else on screen. They fear murder and death, whereas it visibly brings him joy. Even in the moments before a battle to the death, compare how both actors deliver the same line.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
For Paul, he says it with respect and sincerity. He believes in himself, but this is a means to an end. Whereas for Feyd, he displays zero fear, and looks and sounds as if he's about to engage in his favourite game. As for him, the chance to participate in this activity is a gift in and of itself.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
And these tiny little smiling spasms springing to the surface further demonstrate that this is who the character is at their core. We can see his pleasure genuinely humming underneath, which makes him feel more alive. Even if he's watching someone close to him be killed, rather than expressing grief or shock, Butler subtly battles a smirk from entering the corner of his lips. He can't help it, he respects the power of violence, no matter who is enacting it or who has fallen to it. And because he believes he's the best at it, he's conditioned himself to never feel intimidated by it. And that leads into the final key, stalking his prey. This is, without a doubt, my favourite detail of this performance, and was quite reminiscent of Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of Hannibal Lecter. Butler stated, "It was looking at animals, looking at a panther and a snake, and seeing how they use their eyes and moments of stillness in unpredictable moments where they may strike. All of that was bedrock for me." So with that in mind, just look at how Feyd gawks at his potential victims, honing in on them like he sees nothing else. We talk about eye contact a lot on this channel, because it makes a huge difference in how we perceive a character. We might like to think that every performance we enjoy is all natural instinct, but part of the craft of acting and delivering that one take that the director will choose in the edit room is training yourself out of certain bad habits. And when it comes to eye contact, Michael Caine put it perfectly here.
And if I keep blinking, it weakens me. But if I'm talking to you and I don't blink and I just keep going and I don't blink and I keep on going and I don't blink, you start to listen to what I'm saying. And It makes me a very strong person, as opposed to someone who is sitting there going, which is someone who's completely flustered.
Not blinking is strength. It builds intention behind the character's eyes as they appear unbroken and focused on their objective. That's why during their final duel, after Feyd threatens to play with Paul's pet, both men lock onto their target and stare at each other with unbroken eye contact. This builds anticipation for the viewer as they're both equaling the other's intensity, whereas if one of them was blinking or looking away, we would see their uncertainty, and it would translate as weakness. A counterexample is when Feyd belittles his brother and insists he kiss his feet. So Feyd, the character with all the power, looks down at his prey with no blinking. Whereas his brother, the vulnerable victim being oppressed, has to look away and even closes his eyes. Feyd views every scene as a face-off. He's always the dominating force who wants to stare his opponent down to see if they're brave enough to face him. And if they ever do try, by looking or talking back, he will extinguish them. That's why throughout this entire scene, notice how Feyd never blinks. He's too enamored by the violent possibilities he could enact to take his eyes off her. And from the moment he arrives, his intention never once breaks. He already has the information he needs, so this is all just for pleasure's sake. While for his victim, she is willing to meet his gaze, as she's not ashamed or regretful of who she is or what she's done, and she's trying not to break. But knowing her fate, these little eye flutters still work their way to the surface, because she is human in a way he is not. Because by never blinking or breaking or showing fear when others normally would, Butler is expressing his character's psychopathic nature. He doesn't worry or doubt, he just takes and does what he wants without any concern for consequence. And he's true to his character right to the end, never once breaking, always sticking to his code of honor and deriving pleasure from bloodshed. And by finding so many overt and subtle ways to express his character's twisted psyche, Austin Butler perfectly embodied the best cinematic villain I've seen in years, who grabbed our attention from the moment he appeared on screen and didn't let it go until his final breath. He looked distinctive, he sounded venomous, and he felt dangerous. He was everything a villain is supposed to be. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.